Seven Sticks, The Secret of Millennium 7 by Hatem Giame, read by the author. Purpose's Tale. Once there was a lioness and her cub. They were all that was left of a strong pride. Disease hit and killed all but these two. The lioness was faced with two choices. She could join another pride, but this meant certain death for a young Simba. A lioness could easily join another pride, but she could not bring her young male cub. He represented a threat to the new pride's future. First, he was not related to the male leader in the pride, and this was a direct genetic threat. Then he would take food out of the mouths of the pride. So the lioness to join a new pride meant certain death for her young Simba. The second choice was for her to raise her young Simba to maturity, and then he could survive on his own. Loving her young Simba, she chose to raise him. The lioness found a nice cave and hid her young Simba in it as she went out to hunt. They lived well for a time. Every evening she returned with food for her young Simba. One day she went out, and in her efforts to bring down some prey, she was seriously wounded. She never returned to the cave. The young Simba waited for days, and hunger crept upon him. He was finally forced to leave the cave. He wanted to find his mother and maybe get something to eat in the process. Luck was not with him. He didn't find his mother nor anything to eat. His search lasted for days, and finally from hunger, he laid down to die. It just so happened that on the path where he lay down to wait death, a herd of sheep was walking through. A mother sheep saw him and had mercy upon him. She had recently lost her baby and fell in love with this Simba and took it upon herself to raise him. As time went by, the herd accepted him, and he grew up thinking he was a sheep. He ate like a sheep, he drank like a sheep, he even thought like a sheep. In time, he forgot about his mother and about the ways of a Simba and literally tried to fit into the sheep world. As he grew, he began to experience abuse from the rest of the herd. Although he did everything to fit in, he could not. He began growing a mane. His fangs and claws began growing as well. Although he tried to eat grass, it never satisfied him, and he could not figure out why. The more abuse he felt, the harder he tried to fit in. He suppressed his aggression and convinced himself that what he felt was wrong, and he became a better sheep than everyone in the herd. He convinced himself he was a sheep with deformities. He literally believed he was a sheep. One day, while he was out playing with the other sheep his age, he was being bullied by the male sheep. They would sneak behind him and knock him down and laugh as they made comments about him not belonging to the herd and calling him the ugliest sheep in history. Unknown to the young sheep, hiding in the bushes was a hungry, full-grown Simba. He watched what was going on and prepared to pounce. He waited to the opportune moment. As the young Simba was picking himself up, the full-grown Simba ran out into the herd of the young sheep at full speed, catching all of them by surprise. One of the young males sprang out in front of him to slow him down while the rest escaped. The adult Simba slapped him with his paw and ripped the life out of his young body. The young Simba, watching all of this, just looked on stunned, not knowing whether to run or to fight. After the adult Simba bit a chunk of the sheep, he walked over to the young Simba, who just looked at him terrified. The adult Simba said, "I just happened to be going through the area and I noticed your hunt had gone wrong, so I decided to help you. Of course, I would share a portion of the spoils with you." The young Simba just looked at him with shock, amazement, and fear. He immediately dropped to the ground and began to beg for his life. "Please, don't eat me," he said. The older Simba, looking at the young Simba in amazement, began to laugh. "Young one, Simbas do not eat other Simbas." The young Simba looked up at him, stunned even more. "I am a sheep. Please don't eat me." The older Simba really began to laugh, falling on his back and began rolling around. "Young one, you cannot be serious. You are too funny." The adult Simba got up and saw from the look on the young Simba's face that he was serious. He actually thought he was a sheep. You are serious. You really believe that you are a sheep. The young Simba looked up at him, shocked by the question. Yes, I am a sheep. The older Simba looked at the young Simba with amazement. I have traveled these wide plains, and I thought I had seen everything, but never in my life have I seen a Simba who thought he was a sheep. The older Simba walked around the young Simba and put his paw on the Simba's tail. If you are a sheep, explain why you have a tail which matches my own. The young Simba looked at his tail and looked at the older Simba's tail. That is a deformity. Then the older Simba walked back in front of the Simba and put his paw on the young Simba's paws and said, how is it that your paws match mine? The young Simba looked at his paws and then at the adult Simba's paws. That is another deformity, and it has to be a simple coincidence that they look like yours. At first, this was entertaining to the older Simba, but now he was growing very concerned. He stepped back and sat down. He thought to himself, could this be really true? A king of beasts really believes that he is a sheep? He really believes he is prey. The older Simba jumped into action and grabbed the young Simba and dragged him to a body of water to show him his reflection. When they got there, the older Simba forced the young Simba to look at their reflection provided by the pool. If you are a sheep, reaching out, grabbing the mouth of the young Simba and forcing it open, why do your fangs match my own? Grabbing him by his mane and forcing him to continue to look at the reflection, why do you have a mane like mine? Grabbing his paw and squeezing him to force out the claws. If you are a sheep, why do you have claws like mine? The young Simba, looking very confused, thought about the question and could only come up with one logical answer. You must be a deformed sheep just like me. The older Simba could do nothing but laugh. He laughed so hard that he fell into the water. He pulled himself out of the water and laid down, rolling, laughing some more. He finally stopped, looked at the young Simba, who looked even more confused than before. You poor little lost Simba. It must really be hard trying to be what you are not. The older Simba rose quickly and sprung on the young Simba and dragged him to the body of the dead sheep. He tore a piece of the flesh and forced it into the young Simba's mouth. At first, the young Simba choked and tried to resist, but the older Simba was too strong for him. As the blood and the meat slid into his mouth, something happened. It was like his belly was on fire, and uncontrollably he began to chew. He began to like this feeling as his body heated up and the meat hit his stomach. It was like the hunger that had been in him for a long time had finally been satisfied. He automatically sprung into the sheep and began tearing and eating the flesh. The older Simba stepped back and let him feast. My goodness, you are eating that meat like a Simba. The young Simba stopped and saw what he was doing, and a deep sense of shame fell on him. The older Simba advised him, stop fighting your nature and be who you were born to be. You come from a great people, and sheep and other animals are our prey. If we do not do our job and follow our nature, we die, and in turn, so do our prey. So let your guilt go, let your shame go, and be who you are. You are not a sheep and never have been. You were lied to. Now embrace your true self and be who you were created to be. The young Simba listened, and the urge hit him to eat some more of the sheep, and he followed his nature. Young Simba, you now have a choice to make. You could come with me and I can teach you the ways of your ancestors, or you could stay here in your pretend world of sheepdom. The young Simba looked up at him from the kill with questioning eyes. I don't know if I could survive out there. You seem to live a lonely existence. I am used to living in a herd with a family. The older Simba looked at him with care in his eyes and said, we don't live in herds. We move in prides. And as a Simba, you are never alone. We have the wide open plains. We have the hunting teams. And we have each other. Watch this. The older Simba threw his head back and let out a loud and mighty roar that moved out into the world. And just as it was quieting down from the distance, he could hear other roars coming from all directions. You see, we Simbas are never alone. And if you come back to us, you will never be alone either. The young Simba thought about the offer and eventually accepted. He walked off into the plains, leaving his old life behind and now embracing his true identity. Purpose completed his tale and returned to his seat. The old man looked at Purpose. Thank you for your words and your story, my son. You have lifted my spirits. Creativity stood to her feet and without saying a word went directly into her tale. This has been a reading from 7 Sticks, The Secrets of Millennium 7 by Hatem Giami, read by the author. Thank you for listening.